So to summarise this lean manufacturing training, it was on the job, it was focusing on authentic workplace issues, it was team oriented, involving peer learning, especially mentoring from team leaders. The literacy and numeracy were not treated as problems. No one was identified as lacking in literacy and numeracy. All workers received the same training. There was no special remedial programs. Workers were valued for their contribution to their work skills, regardless of their formal literacy, language and numeracy levels. And the specific literacy and numeracy skills were completely embedded and often invisible in the workplace practices. Now, this idea of the visibility of literacy and numeracy, conventionally we have this idea that you have to have a certain platform of skills, that you have to have a certain foundation of language, literacy and numeracy skills in which to build other skills on top of that. Going back to Heather Ridout in that radio broadcast again, she was talking about the capability of workers, and she commented that's why this literacy thing is so important. That says something, it's a singular thing, because if you don't have it, it's very hard to build those other skills on top of it. Now, I think that's a generally held view. You've got to have these basics, this foundation level, and then you build those other skills on top of it. But it's a little bit problematic when you go into a company and you start analysing literacy and numeracy practices, workplace practices, and those skills aren't really that visible. I mean, this is an example. This is the sophisticated work that the modellers were required to do. Now, I can't explain what's happening here. It's a bit, because we didn't understand it as researchers. But what happens when someone goes to a hearing aid clinic and they take an impression of the ear canal? I'm not sure what the material is, but they must put something in the ear, and a plaster of some kind. And then they send that model to the hearing aid centre. They then put it in this special thing and make and it photographs a three-dimensional image that comes up on the screen like that. It's actually very small in practice because it goes in the ear canal. And I think you find that grey, pinky area is the actual model of the ear, the three-dimensional image. And the modellers have to determine the shape of the hearing aid for that person. They have to fit the electrical components that go into that hearing aid, and they also have to make sure that hearing aid is an absolute right fit, that it's very comfortable, it's not going to fall out, but it can't be the exact same size of the mould that went in. It doesn't work out like that. They had to shave bits off, and it's a skill that requires a while to pick up. Now this guy, you only see the back of his head, he had a mouse in both hands, and a dual mouse operation to work this computer image, and he was zooming in and out, revolving it, turning it around. I can't tell you exactly what's happening here because I'm not an insider into his work. I think you find that grey area is trying to work out how the actual electrical components are going to fit into that hearing aid. This is almost a completed hearing aid, and you can see that the electrical components are now placed in it, and that guy goes around and shaves things off and to make sure that it's the exact fit that fits the specifications for that particular person. Now that's a sophisticated job, and you might ask yourself, well, we do ask ourselves, where is the language, literacy and numeracy skills in that kind of work? Where do you pick out the literacy and where do you pick out the numeracy skills? They're effectively hidden, they're invisible. Now, some things are easy. I mean, when the order form comes in, sure, you have to look up the number and check the order form. That's pretty straightforward. But apart from that order form, that guy's pointing the cursor, he's zooming in and out of sections of the computer image, he's clicking on icons, he's making sure the correct electrical components go in the ear, he's rotating the image around, he's drawing contours on the hearing aid, he's shaving bits off. Where are the literacy and numeracy skills in that? It was very difficult for us as researchers to actually see what he was doing. We didn't understand what was going on in that process, but the actual modellers themselves, yeah, it's straightforward for them. And one of them said, oh, look, the icons are down the screen. We just follow them in order. After a while, it's just like playing a video game, basically. But it was probably the more difficult job in that company, and it's normally a job that people had undertaken after they'd worked their way around the company and they knew something about hearing aids. They knew that you couldn't put the coils and the amplifier close together in a hearing aid because it causes feedback. They knew that it had to be a certain shape, otherwise it was going to cause discomfort to the wearer. They had all this background knowledge. They learnt on their job, and most of it they learnt on their job from their fellow workers, and they also continued to communicate. You know, if they had a hearing aid that didn't quite fit the norm, they discussed things amongst themselves. But in no case was it apparent that these workers lacked literacy and numeracy or skills for their work, or language skills.